Thank you for joining us today. I'm Kevin Weitzel with Outhouse.
And I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
You've probably ran into us before on one of our podcasts. We are co-hosts of the Home Builder Digital Marketing Podcast, and we just were live with the 6th edition of the Home Builder Digital Marketing Summit, which is now, I think we've officially shortened the name to Builder Marketing Summit.
It's not official yet.
No. It's not official yet? Well, that's where you find it on the website, is buildermarketingsummit.com. But anyway, yeah, so he's going to be co-hosting with me today on this Movers and Shakers series. So for those of you that are new to the Movers and Shakers series, here's what the Movers and Shakers series is. I have always been enamored with people that are brave enough that make the step to move from one position to another, from one job to another, one company to another, one industry to another sometimes. And then on top of that, people that truly shake the tree up. They don't just come in and do status quo. They don't just do the punch in the clock, punch out of the clock. They truly shake things up and make things different and make themselves impactful at every place that they go. We happen to have somebody, matter of fact, they're an OSC, a realtor, a sales guru, but they're all formerly known as Prince. So Ingrid, could you do me a favor? Give us a quick rundown on the new name, the new company, just a little background about you. And you are a first-generation American, right?
Yes, I am.
Could you give us a quick little download on that too?
Yeah, absolutely. So actually, I migrated here to the U.S. in '88 from the Philippines, thanks to my mother and my father. But we actually planted roots in Sacramento, California. Technically Elk Grove. So for you Sacramentoans, you should know where that is. But basically, that's where I grew up. Basically all my life. Ended up going to, all of elementary school, high school. Right after high school, went into college and found myself working for Southwest Airlines. And
I didn't know.
Yeah, right. From Southwest Airlines, actually, I got into private aviation. And in private aviation, it actually moved me to Tampa, Florida. So I ended up living in Tampa, Florida for about 5 years. And that's actually where I got into home building. But before we get into all of that, I do want to acknowledge the name change. As you mentioned earlier, I am a recent newlywed. Now it's about 1 month new. When we first talked, it was only like 4 days new or a week new, whatever it was. So still getting used to the transition, and I've officially gotten my new Social Security card, my new driver's license, but still trying to make the change with everything else. So pretty exciting change for me, to say the least. But yeah, that's a little bit about what's been happening with me thus far this last month.
Well, and Greg, didn't she just start some kind of new company?
I heard of some new company. I think we should at least mention that. Ingrid, did you start some new company?
I did. I started Convertly Solutions, and we actually offer turnkey online sales and marketing solutions for home builders. We primarily focus on online sales, and fractional sales leadership is basically our primary service offerings. And really it's an exciting time for me and my team as we continue to grow and hopefully make an impact in the industry.
So your first job, and I just learned this, and I've been friends with you for 7-8 years now, that you were first with Southwest Airlines. I did not know that. That was the first job?
No, my first job was working at Burger King.
Boom! So you did flip some burgers. I love it. All right.
Yes, working at Burger King. I was actually working the drive-thru, so nice. Talking to people. I didn't give out any free meals, maybe 1 or 2, but if you were one of my friends, I probably hooked you up.
Mix a steak or something, or
yeah, that's right.
No, this wouldn't be a Big Mac. You said be a Whopper, right? And after the home of the Whopper.
The Whopper. But admittedly, after Burger King, I never went back there for any more food, just because you get sick and tired of it.
Does even the smell to this day get you?
No, not not so bad now, but every now and then, probably once every 10 years, I'll get a craving.
So Kevin, it's about Ingrid, but just for comparison, what was your first job?
Mine?
Yeah, yours.
So I come from a poor family, and my first official job that I had was my mom couldn't afford to buy me school clothes. So at the age of 9, I talked her into buying me on her charge card at Montgomery Ward's a mower. And I went out and mowed lawns for an entire summer and bought my own school clothes for school because I was embarrassed wearing he was 7 years older than me. So trust me, bell bottoms were no longer cool by the time I got his hand-me-downs. Nobody wants to go to school and 79 with bell bottoms. That's crazy. But anyway, yes. But my first official job was actually, I was, believe it or not, in the construction industry. I was what they call a yard bird. And that's just the knucklehead that goes around and spools all the wire, picks up the job site, sweeps all the trash, cleans the office. Basically a glorified do everything monkey, whatever they tell you to do. I'm everybody's flunky. So that was my first real job. Then I went to the bicycle industry, and the rest is history. But how about you, Greg? Your first job?
Oh, my very first one, it's the good old-fashioned paper route, delivering newspapers. For those who have never heard of newspapers, they're these things that but yeah, just on the bike, with the big basket in the back and riding by and picking them up and throwing them in the driveways.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So Ingrid, would you consider your first job in the home building industry that when you became a realtor, or would it be the next stage? What would you consider that first job in the home building industry?
I would say probably at my time with Lennar. So
okay.
Yeah, so I came into real estate. Actually, it just fell into my lap, kind of. So as I mentioned, I moved from Elk Grove, California, and moving away from my parents for the very first time. Right, it was a big deal for me. Moved to Florida, and at that time, I'm their only daughter. I'm the oldest, and I have 2 brothers that are younger. But as with most Asian families, Filipinos, they tend to follow their daughter and the eldest. So my parents wanted to move to Florida, right? And that was a big deal because, all of my extended family is all in Sacramento as well. So they really needed some help in finding the right home for them. And so me living in Tampa, I basically did all of the research for my parents, right? So researched areas. And that was really my first exposure into looking for a home, right? And in that process, I fell in love with the whole concept of real estate, right? So after I helped my parents find their first home, they actually ended up purchasing a new home with a home builder in Riverview, Florida. Went through the entire new home sales process, loved it. And I was like, I think this is something that I can do, right? And at the time I was in private aviation, managing aircraft charters. And so during my, off time, I decided to get my real estate license. So I got my real estate license back in 2006 and jumped into general real estate. And so I did that for a little bit, but I always knew I wanted to be in new home sales, but I wasn't really familiar with how that process worked. So wanted to get my foot in the door. I figured I'd get some experience under my belt selling resales. And as we all know, resale is very difficult, right? You have to, you work really, really hard for your money. You have to prospect, you have to market, you have to do all the things, right? And so at the very first opportunity I could get into new home sales, I took that chance. And Lennar Tampa gave me that opportunity. And I just absolutely fell in love with it. And, Lennar was fantastic because they had a great training program at the time that I was there. And it really gave me the structure of what new home sales is all about, right? So they had great training. They were actually the first builder that I knew of at the time to introduce internet sales consultants, right? And now I wasn't in online sales at the time. I was on-site sales. So I got to experience what their assistance meant to me as an on-site salesperson, but it helped me become a lot more successful as well. Because with Lennar, you know, as we know, they're a publicly traded company. The expectation is you're selling at least one home a month or one home a week, right? And so 4 homes in a month is what your KPI standards are, right? So you had to be hustling all the time. And so as an on-site salesperson, it was important for me to make sure that I was following up, but leaning on that internet sales consultant to get me the appointments obviously made me a lot more successful.
So going into a time machine, looking back at that era, you literally got in the home building industry right before the crash.
Yes. Yes.
That's great.
And that, you know, it's always timing, right? And little did I know that obviously the crash was going to happen. But, you know, it taught me a lot about being, you know, relentless, being gritty, and just working very hard, right? Because especially during that time, during their session, even my time at Lennar, they actually also acquired US Homes. I don't know if you were familiar with that acquisition. And we were all in the same division. And I remember they had a huge reduction in force after that merger, right? And it was the whole, hey, these folks are going to meet us on the 7th floor, and these folks are going to meet us on the 4th floor, right? And so nobody really knew what was happening. We just got a phone call say, hey, meet us on the 7th floor, which is the Lennar floor. And, you know, chit chatter happens. We get up there. Everybody that was on the 7th floor was safe.
4th floor is HR?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
That's a bad floor. Hey, you know what though? In hindsight, it's better to be in the home building industry during the crash versus an aviation company during the crash, because nobody wants to be on an airplane during the crash, right, Jim? Right, Greg?
I'll go with that. Hey, Ingrid, question. You mentioned the benefit of starting with a large builder was the training. I think that's kind of a unique insight. If somebody else was interested in kind of following that same path, do you feel like that's still the case today, where they get better training at a much larger builder?
You know, that is a great question. And I work with a lot of home builders, and some home builders do a really great job with having a new hire training program. Some are mediocre, and some are just like, here's the keys to your models, figure it out. Right. And you know, there's something to be said for somebody that is resourceful and wants to learn the ropes themselves. Right. But I do feel that when you have that structure in understanding what new home sales is about, obviously you're just going to be a lot more successful. So having a structured program, I mean, it's obviously a game changer.
Well, you went from Lennar, that was, you know, obviously a ridiculously large builder with fantastic training, and then your next step was a smaller, more of a regional builder. What made you make that move? I mean, because that seemed kind of bold all on its own.
Yeah, well, I moved to Texas.
There you go.
Yeah.
So not only that bold, you just relocated. Yeah.
That's right. I wish it was more of a bold move, but I ended up moving to Texas. And it was actually moving to Texas, obviously radically different than living in Florida. Texas, as many of you know, it's a big, huge state. DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth, is a massive city, right? Fort Worth is radically different than Dallas. So I really wanted to take about a year off of home building just to really understand the lay of the land of how Dallas worked, right? And at the time, MI Homes was actually just entering the market here in DFW. And I was fortunate enough to be brought on their team. I was the 3rd person hired on their team to launch MI Homes here in DFW. And the CFO at the time, Robbie Mosier, was basically my direct leader. And he actually made the transition to Dunhill Homes. And in that transition, he says, hey, you're coming with me. And I was like, wait, what? So, and that was the first concept. He says, "Hey, I really need you to do online sales and launch this program for Dunhill Homes." And I'm like, I know nothing about online sales. I said, I love sales, but yes, let's figure it out.
Trial by fire, right?
Yeah, that's right. So moving to Dunhill Homes was obviously, I would say one of the best career moves that I've had. Yeah, which is really what introduced me to become more involved in home building, right? In NAHB, and really become more intertwined with the building industry, right? And that's really, big thanks to one of my first mentors, Chris Hartley. Many of you guys probably know who he is, but he was the one that was a pivotal change maker in my career. He opened up a lot of doors. But in saying that, I also had to do the work myself, right? So making those connections in the industry, being more involved and really giving back is, what helped shape my career. And being with a regional smaller builder like Dunhill Homes, they're a lot more flexible with things that we can do, right? And things that we can implement and innovate on. And so it was a great time for me in the industry.
So that's an interesting point. So when you're working with a builder like Lennar, let's just pick Lennar because we've already mentioned it. That's like being on a aircraft carrier. To turn an aircraft carrier 5 degrees, it takes 9 people, a whole committee to make the 5-degree turn on basically a steering wheel.
Mhm.
And when you're in a PT boat, that's a small little attack boat with a machine gun on the hull. That's where they can literally just kind of dart in wherever they want to go, and you can make those bold moves and quick, fast moves. And so you're pointing out that's an obvious advantage of being with a smaller company.
Right.
But then you made a move, didn't you? Where'd you go next?
I did. So after, it wasn't really a move. So Dunhill actually was acquired by Trendmaker Homes, which is 5 Pointe Homes, right? And so, so in that transition, everybody basically got to stay within our company, our organization. But at the time, I had been with Dunhill for quite some time, and I was at a point in my career where I wanted to elevate myself to be a sales leader or really grow our online sales program. And, as you know, with a public home builder, that's just a little bit different, right? So I was actually, in my time of transition between Dunhill and then Pointe, I was actually offered an opportunity, a sales leadership opportunity with Shattuck Homes. And that's how I actually ended up making the transition to Shattuck, because I was at a point in time in my career where I said, hey, I wanted to really, work with teams and help them become better. Right. I did online sales. I was, I felt like I was an expert in selling, and I just wanted to learn something new and be challenged a little bit different. Right. And Shattuck is a well-respected home builder here in the DFW market. So it really gave me an opportunity to learn who I was as a sales leader, because it allowed me to really, for lack of better words, get out of the shadow of, Chris Hartley, which he's taught me a lot of great things, but it allowed me to do things on my own. Right.
So it sounds like, Ingrid, it wasn't just I need a job moment for you. It was what do I really want to do next? Where do I want to develop myself? And then you went and found the position that felt like it would fit. Is that fair?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think, for me, throughout my entire life, right, there has been this like looming fire of wanting to make sure that I was proving myself to not only myself, but to my parents, to the industry. And I think I've shared this enough, and I'm comfortable enough to share this with people, that I didn't graduate college, right? And because I didn't graduate college, I always felt the need that I needed to prove myself, work that much harder, work extra hours, do all of these things to say, hey, I'm worthy of doing this, right? And in that time, if I wanted to elevate my career, I was going to have to be the one to go out and get it and prove myself, right? So that was my big jump into really making a name for myself in the sales leader, role, was going out there and just doing it on my own and getting it for Shattuck Homes.
That's romancing the stone. That is a term that jewelers use when they look at a crude rock, basically just a crude stone, looks like a milky piece of garbage, basically. And then they decide how and where to cut it and facet it to turn it into the brilliant diamonds that we put in our engagement and your engagement ring, right? Boom, look at that. So it relates to you truly at that point in your career, you were faceting your own stone, you were romancing your own stone and shaping yourself into who you wanted to be, not just a cog in the machine at Builder X, Y, or Z.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
I love it. I love it. Where'd you move after that? What was your next step?
Yeah. So then an opportunity opened up for me at Century Complete. And that was, honestly, it was for me exciting, but very scary, because it was a regional VP of sales role to manage the entire state of Texas. And let me tell you, like, that was a role where I was like, I had a lot of doubt in myself because I'm like, can I do this? Right? Am I ready for this? And I just figured, I'm like, you know what? I will never know unless I give it a shot. Right? And yeah, it's just taking the leap. And I would say one of the things that I've learned in the transitional roles that I've had, throughout my career, is that you're never really ready for anything, right? And you just have to be ready to learn and to humble yourself to say, hey, you know what? Can you teach me this? Or can you help explain this a little bit further? Because that's how you learn. And you have to humble yourself, humble your ego to say, hey, I don't know everything. Right. So, but I learned a ton in my time, in my short time with Century.
You don't just leap. You actually have to, the saying is leap and a net will appear. You basically have to leap and you have to weave your own net.
That's right.
Because if you weave that net, then you can safely land and not worry about crashing, right?
I was going to say, Ingrid, I think what you hit on there, though, is a real great life lesson for those who might be trying to figure this out for themselves, that you, if the opportunity is really going to stretch you, you will not feel ready. And there's this piece that you don't know, but it takes that confidence to say, I can figure it out, which you demonstrated. And I think that's just a great life lesson that everybody has to understand at some point.
Yeah. And I would even say that you just have to really be comfortable with change. What's that say? Get comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? Yeah. And throughout my whole life, I've been that way. Now, that's not to say that I had to take a pause from time to time, because you still need that courage to take the leap, right? But again, you have to remind yourself, what's the worst that can happen, right? And the worst isn't that bad. So that's just my mantra from time to time, where when I doubt my capabilities or whatever may be happening, right? So it's just, you just have to constantly remind yourself of that.
Well, the worst that could have happened is you could have been stuck in Burger King still to this day. That could have been the worst.
If that was the worst of it, I'm telling you, I would probably open up my own franchise. That would have been the worst.
That is the shaker in you. That's the person that we wanted to talk to today. So that's perfect. All right. So after Century Complete, you were a co-founder at an OSC services company, Shared Drive, industry leader in the industry. Yeah. You were there for quite some time, but then decided to open your own company, Convertly. Can you tell us just a quick little blurb, elevator pitch on Convertly? What is it you guys do? I know we kind of mentioned at the beginning, but let's just kind of give just a quick dive into it.
Yeah. So with Convertly, we focus primarily on turnkey online sales solutions and sales leadership. So for us, and one of the primary reasons why I started, Convertly was mostly because I wanted to focus more on on refining the online sales program and the sales leadership piece, right? And I feel like that is something that is missing still in the industry. I feel like that there's a big need for it. And so I decided to, again, take the leap, take a little bit of a challenge, and, really hone in on what I want to make an impact on in our industry.
So you're Sting. The Police were the top of the charts. They had the #1 album with Synchronicity. And then Sting was like, you know what? I'm just going to go do my own thing.
Yeah, that's right.
I love it.
That's right. And I figured, what's the worst that can happen? The worst that can happen is if it doesn't work out, I go back and be a sales leader for a home builder. Or I can go back selling homes.
Absolutely. You absolutely can. So out of respect for everybody's time, because I know we're kind of getting close to wrapping up here, could we chat a little bit about some of your inspirations? Who along the way in your, let's just go with the home building career, who along the way was your biggest inspiration?
Yeah, I would say that, my biggest inspirations have been those leaders that have believed in me and that have poured into me, right? Because, I don't know what I don't know. And so for those people that gave me the opportunity, the time and the effort to guide me through this industry has been my biggest inspiration. So that's the Chris Hartleys of the world, the Chad, the Jeff Shore. I know, that many of those folks are still inspiring many people today.
Yeah.
But, I think it goes without saying your inspiration can only go so far. You have to be willing to make the commitment to constantly be challenging yourself and changing.
I think too, Ingrid, it's great that you recognize though that other people play a role, and that you acknowledge them. And so often it's connections that we make along the way that we never know where we plant those seeds, and we never know when we're going to get the harvest and get the fruit that comes from it in the future. And so often you leave one place and you go somewhere else, and then somebody else comes around the corner and they knew you from this or from that. And it's just crazy how those connections build over time. And so it's great to hear you talk about those.
Yeah. And I think that's the one thing that, you miss as a sales leader. You don't really know the impact that you're making on your team members unless they outrightly tell you, right? So, for me, that's my only hope here, is that I can inspire others to be kind, to do better, and to make an impact on our industry, because, selling homes and building dreams and building families is, gosh, that there's no words for it.
So when I was a professional cyclist, as a lot of our listeners know, and I've obviously lost that skinny body and I've become much heavier. When I was on group rides and I was out of shape, I used to have a target. And that target was, as soon as I got passed by a fatter person than me, I wanted to make sure that they were not going to beat me to the finish. So I had that mental target. Targets don't necessarily have to be something, positive, negative, or anything else. They could just be something that inspires you to keep moving forward and pressing forward. So in life, did you have a target? Was there a Susie in school that you were just, I have to be better than Susie? Did you have that target in life, or is it just that you wanted to be excellent for yourself?
You know what? That's exactly it. For me, my target was always myself. And primarily because, again, it was always me wanting to make sure that I was always the best version of myself. And when I felt like I became the expert in whatever that was at the time, it's always me wanting to grow. And I think that's one of the things that I really, that I really try to focus on for me is what's my next, elevation, right? So it's just the constant need to challenge myself, and that's who I'm always running after. Sometimes it's exhausting, admittedly.
It can be. It totally can be. So basically, you want that need for challenge. You want that need to elevate yourself. So you obviously don't have a fear of change, but what is that one thing, that one facet in your stone that caused you to drive yourself, to give yourself that drive? Was it a dad that neglected you and didn't love you? And even when you made it in the Marine Corps and got pinned by the President of the United States, you could never impress them or anything.
Kevin,
Yeah.
it's about Ingrid. It's about Ingrid. Stay
Oh,
focused.
sorry.
We can get you on with the counselor later. Okay.
Sorry, I got into a different conversation. Anyway,
Right.
so what is it that drives you? Your one key thing that you can leave people with today. What's the push for
Yeah,
you?
I mean, I would say what drives me is a little bit like twofold, right? Like I love change and I love the different possibilities. And, with every career move that I had, it was a stepping stone for something even better, right? So that drives me because I know that, for me, if there's something else that I want, it's got to be something better than what I have today, right? It can't be any worse. And the other thing is, maybe just a little bit of, proving to my parents that, that I didn't need to be a nurse to be successful. So that's kind of like the thing that always drives me is that, it's proving to my parents that, hey, I'm pretty dang successful just the way that I am.
Well, Ingrid, if you look back to young Ingrid with what you know now, what is the one or two pieces of advice that you would want young Ingrid to know?
I would say, don't wait for the time where you think you're ready because you're never going to be ready. So just do it, take the leap, and don't be afraid to take the risk and the change. Because if you're willing to take the risk and you're willing to make the change and you're willing to work hard, you're going to get through it.
Perfect. So if somebody wants to get in touch with you to either chat about just your journey or learn more about Convertly, what's the best way to get in touch with you?
Couple of ways. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. So it's under Ingrid Ricks, or you can shoot me an email at Ingrid@convertlysolutions.com, or visit our website at convertlysolutions.com.
Well, that's fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Ingrid. Obviously, I'm a friend of yours. I do appreciate you 100%. I think you are a star and a beacon that people can look to for inspiration and just as a connector. I think you're a fantastic human being and an excellent person in the industry. So thank you for being on this webinar, Movers and Shakers, with us. I'm Kevin White with Outhouse.
I'm Greg Bray with Blue Tangerine.
Thank you for your time.
Bye, y'all.